Good evening, everybody, and welcome to our show this evening on breaking the cycle, combating the teen vaping and opioid abuse problem in Cobb County and elsewhere. We're bringing together the resources of the Cobb County School District, the Cobb and Douglas Public Health folks, Cobb County government, and the Marietta schools to talk about some of these issues, the problems that are in society and our schools today, the challenges of dealing with it, and an ever-evolving situation, and hopefully look for some solutions and ways that we as parents and adults and supervisors can address the situation. Both vaping, which has become an increasing problem, and opioid abuse, which is a problem throughout society, not just the school districts or here, obviously, in Cobb County. My name is Ross Cavitt. I am a former TV reporter here in Atlanta. For the last several years, I've been the communications director with Cobb County, and I would just want to facilitate the discussion this evening as we go through this issue and hear various aspects about it. We have a series of guests that will be joining us throughout this program. I'm starting with two ladies off to my right now. The one closest to me is Lori Judy. She has a master's of public health from Tulane University and has been working in the role of overdose response specialist with Cobb and Douglas Public Health since January of 2020, coordinating the Cobb County Opioid Task Force, which is a group of first responders, government officials, healthcare providers, people in recovery, and other stakeholders who come together to address this crisis. And then next to her is Laura Searcy, who is a pediatric nurse practitioner with firsthand knowledge of the impact of substance abuse and addiction on children, families, and communities. She's dedicated her efforts toward primary prevention of youth substance abuse, tobacco prevention and control, building resilience in children, and addressing the worsening youth behavior health crisis. Welcome to you both. That is a mouthful, but we have a lot to talk about. And Lori, let's start with you. Kind of help us put this whole thing into perspective when it comes to the issue of opioid abuse among adolescents.
Okay, so I'm going to talk about vaping really quickly. First, just to say that vaping among adolescents has gone way up. The last youth behavioral health survey that was taken in 2019 showed about 7% of adolescents were vaping. That has gone up to 1 in 4 middle and high school students these days are now vaping. So the Surgeon General has recently said that more high school students are vaping than adults. So that has become, that has gone way up since the pandemic. Opioids, it's looking a little bit different. It's a big problem for our population in their 30s to 40s. In Cobb County, we have not seen a big problem of opioids in kids. We had about 119 people die of opioid overdose in Cobb County in 2021, but none of those people, fortunately, were under the age of 21. However, in the state of Georgia, we had 36 kids die of opioid overdoses in 2021, and 35 of those were apparently of fentanyl, and that is about a 770% increase from 2019 in deaths in children for opioids, and that actually is about 3.6 times higher in a rate than the people who are above age 20.
So those are pretty depressing statistics. Is there anything we can glean or take as any sort of positive development, anything you've seen recently?
Like I said, we are in Cobb County, we're not really seeing these opioid overdoses in children, so we have the opportunity right now to just get ahead of the problem, and that's one of the reasons why we're talking to parents now, is because before it starts to affect our kids, we want you guys to know what your resources are and what to look out for. Okay,
Laura Searcy, kids think they're bulletproof. Mm-hmm. We all know that. Nothing can hurt them. Why is putting anything into their bodies of these illicit substances harmful to them?
There's a great deal of brain development that goes on between the ages of 10 and doesn't completely finish until about age 25. And for all the parents of teenagers or college students out there, with your sons, if you said they're still teenagers until they're 25, you know you were ahead of science, you're 100% right. But the important thing for any kind of substance use or addictive problem, any use of any substance with addictive potential between the ages of 10 and 25 is dangerous and risky and has the potential for serious health consequences. Now, I'm not saying that every kid who experiments with nicotine or alcohol or marijuana is going to develop an addiction problem. But we do know that 9 out of 10 folks who are in treatment for substance misuse disorders sometimes in their lives, 9 out of 10 started using before the age of 18. So the take-home message here, there are no soft drugs, hard drugs, more dangerous drugs, less dangerous drugs when you're under 21. Any use of any substance with addictive potential hijacks, damages the development of the brain's risk and reward system, and besides the particular dangers of the particular drug of choice, all of those have long-term consequences for the development of a brain.
So you're talking long-term consequences that are not reversible?
In some cases reversible, in some cases not. But especially with marijuana and vaping marijuana or marijuana use and nicotine use, one of the more disturbing things that we're seeing is the mental health and behavioral health aspects. For both marijuana use and nicotine use, those have been, studies have clearly linked those to increased risks of anxiety, depression, reduced ability to learn, reduced ability to concentrate, long-term reduction in impulse control. Now, as a mom, I often looked at my kids when they did something dumb and brainless and said, "What were you thinking?" And you know that's a waste of breath because there's no thought involved. But kids don't need anything to make them have more difficulty with impulse control. And we're in a behavioral health crisis with our kids with anxiety and depression and substance use and suicide. And even what a lot of folks in my generation used to consider like the harmless rite of passage drugs like alcohol, nicotine, marijuana, we know that they're harmless. Addiction, if you look at it as a city on a roadmap, there's a lot of pathways to it. And all those pathways start with substance experimentation in the teens.
We have a message we want to play along these lines in just a second. I want to hit you with one more question, though, before we go to that. Lori, next to you, gave us some pretty dire statistics about what is happening now in the youth. So if this isn't changed somehow, what do you think the future ramifications for society as a whole might be?
You know, I think all of us want our kids to grow up to reach their maximum potential, to grow up to be happy, healthy, fully functioning adults, being able to have healthy, sustaining relationships. And the use of these substances is going to harm them, their ability to reach their potential. And we do know that substance use also is generational. 25% of kids in the United States of America are currently growing up in households where there is some substance misuse. So we've got some intergenerational effects. So I'm an upstream prevention person. You know, we can talk about treatment and recovery, and we need those things, but we need to stop it before it starts, and that means educating everybody that kids should stay substance-free through their teens.
All right, speaking of that, we have a message that kind of addresses that, and if they're ready, we can play that right now.
It's important to understand that everyone in the world has addictions, or rather natural addictions, to things that are good, like food, water, and sleep. These natural addictions are important for our health and survival, and without them, we would not hunger or crave the things we need to survive. Now, we aren't exactly born with these natural addictions. Our body creates them. Let's look at an example. When you bite into an apple, your brain says, "Yum." Your brain recognizes that this apple is good for you. It has nutrition, vitamins, and gives your body the energy it needs to survive. Whenever the brain recognizes something that's good, it releases a chemical called dopamine. Dopamine causes you to experience pleasure. It's what makes you feel good, like when biting into an apple. The brain releases this dopamine in order to teach the body that this is healthy and good for your survival, and that it should remember to do it again. Now, there are other things we do that can release the pleasurable dopamine, like playing video games, exercising, or reading a good book. However, the amount of dopamine released during these activities is less than what's released when we eat food. The brain does this so it can recognize which is more important. So if you go 2 days without reading a book, or 2 days without eating food, your body is going to crave the food over the book. As such, your brain creates what's called a hierarchy of survival, which ranks how important each of these things is to your survival. Now, there are some things that will not cause the release of dopamine, like eating soap or punching yourself in the face. The brain knows that these things are not good and therefore does not release the pleasurable dopamine because your brain does not want you to do it again. Now, let's look at alcohol, marijuana, tobacco, and other drugs. These are all classified carcinogens, proven to cause cancer and other fatal diseases. Now, your brain should recognize that these things are harmful to your body. However, these substances have special chemical characteristics that fool the brain into releasing dopamine, oftentimes in much greater amounts than the body has ever experienced before. Because of this, the body is fooled into thinking that these things are good and important, sometimes even more important than food, water, or sleep, and consequently hijacks the #1 spot in your survival hierarchy. So now, if you go 2 days without eating or 2 days without drinking alcohol, your body will actually crave the alcohol over the food. This is an extreme case of addiction, where the person addicted believes that they will die if they don't get it. The severity of the addiction depends on where the alcohol or drug lies within your hierarchy of survival, and can increase even with casual use. Research shows that people under the age of 21 are at the highest risk of having their survival hierarchy hijacked. Why? Because their brains are still growing and developing and are hypersensitive to false shocks of dopamine caused by these harmful substances. By 21, the brain is more fully developed and mature, and the survival hierarchy becomes more permanent and less susceptible to getting hijacked. The flip side is that once you are 21, it becomes very difficult to remove these harmful substances from your survival hierarchy. Studies show that 9 out of 10 people who currently struggle with addiction started drinking, smoking, or using before the age of 21. Understanding addiction as a preventable disease can help save millions of lives. The decision to wait until 21 could mean the difference between a life enslaved by addiction or a life full of success and accomplishment. Want to learn more? Visit us at wait21.org.
All right, we're back on set with Breaking the Cycle, and we have Laura Searcy with us here, Lori Judy as well. We have some more guests that will be joining us momentarily. But Laura, the pediatric nurse practitioner, when my kids were going through Cobb County schools, vaping was just becoming a thing. And at the time, it seemed that I remember was being advertised as a safer alternative to smoking. But really, what are kids potentially putting in their bodies today, and what harm is it doing to them?
Well, Russ, there's an adult conversation about vaping and there's a youth conversation about vaping. For an adult that's been vaping for smoking for 60 years and has chronic obstructive lung disease and has been unable or unwilling to quit smoking, vaping might be a safer alternative for them. But there is no safe use of any nicotine or tobacco product for kids. No one who has never used a tobacco product should ever start. Now, the vaping devices that have come along are very, very cleverly able to be disguised. They come in all shapes and sizes. We all know about Juul. There's new disposables. They look like pens. They look like thumb drives. They're easy to hide. They're easy to use without anybody knowing you're using them. There's even vaping clothing where you can hide your vapes. But make no bones about it, any use of any of these devices, which all contain nicotine, 99% on the market, in very high concentrations. And nicotine is one of the most addictive drugs out there. And kids with these new high nicotine disposable vape devices are getting hooked fast and getting hooked on nicotine hard. And the tobacco companies just hope they turn into the next generation of nicotine users of all types.
I'm a non-smoker, lifetime non-smoker, but my dad was a smoker. And I saw how difficult it was for him to stop. Mm-hmm. So when kids get involved in this stuff, how difficult is it for them to stop? It
is difficult, and one of the difficulties is that we hear about smoking cessation medications that doctors can prescribe and other healthcare providers can prescribe for adults. None of those are indicated for use under the age of 18. So you can use them in some circumstances. So we really were catching up in the healthcare, but the American Academy of Pediatrics has just come out with guidelines for healthcare healthcare practitioners. And there are a lot of mobile and web and text-based cessation programs that have come online that are really helpful for kids. So if you find out your kid's been vaping or using nicotine and they're having trouble getting through a day without taking a hit of their vape pen or whatever, there are things you can do to help.
All right, I appreciate it. Laura, seriously, thank you very much. Lori, Judy, stay there. We're going to keep you guys on the set, have more questions for you later. But coming up next, we're going to bring on the law and talk about what's going on in schools. That's coming up.
I don't think that many kids in my son's school even do it.
He makes fun of his friend who vapes.
He would never try it.
She's into soccer.
She's on the honor roll.
She's just not the type.
No way.
No way.
No way.
No way, my kid would never vape.
Get your head out of the cloud. Today, nearly 8,000 kids will start vaping, maybe even yours. Learn about the dangers at talkaboutvaping.org.
All right, welcome back to the set. And we've brought on our next guest who is with the Cobb County School District. Lieutenant Mike Wilson has been a law enforcer for what, 35 years now? Various different jobs. You were with the military at one point. You and I we didn't butt heads when you were in Atlanta, but we met each other and professionally interacted together when I was a reporter and you were a police officer. And you've been with Cobb County Schools for how long now?
11 years now.
11 years. And what are you doing with the department?
Like the operations. I've put out a lot of fires, deal with the principals, officer assignments, so it's pretty busy.
Okay, you said you were putting out fires, so let's talk about vaping. Yeah. How bad of an issue, big of an issue is it in Cobb County schools?
Well, we're seeing a lot of vaping among our students in schools. It seems like it's increased over the years. Kids are vaping it started with mostly nicotine, then it progressed to marijuana, and now we're seeing a lot of the THC vapes. And we're seeing kids even in the middle school with vaping now.
So you're seeing them. How are they being seen? How are they being caught?
Well, one thing that we encourage our officers to do is to get to know the kids. And a lot of times kids will tell their officers, so-and-so has a vape. And that's one way. The administration is same situation. Kids telling the administrators who has vapes. And then sometimes, Ross, the kids will be in the bathroom and you can smell the smoke coming out into the hallways.
Yeah, my wife used to work at Walton High School. I've told you before, and there was a lot of administrators walking through the hallways with their nose up in the air. And as you mentioned, that's kind of how they were caught back then. So let's just say my daughter or grandson in the future gets caught vaping. What happens?
Well, it depends on what she's caught with. Let's take nicotine first. Let's take nicotine and marijuana. Those are going to be misdemeanor charges. And from our offices, we're going to initiate charges if they're an adult. They'll be arrested with an arrest warrant, or they can be taken into custody to Cobb County Detention Center. If it's a juvenile, most of the time we release them to the parents, but we will file a juvenile complaint for them for a misdemeanor still. Now, if it's THC, which is synthetic, it's man-made, it's more potent than marijuana. Those are felony charges. And so we're trying to educate these kids that that's a felony. That could mess up your entire career, your life, just for a smoke with THC in it.
So how do you tell what is in the vape?
We have test kits that our officers use. A lot of schools will purchase the test kits for the officers. We don't totally rely on those. What we do is we'll make the charge, send those test kits and the test over to the GBI. And they're pretty good about getting us results back. Sometimes they get them back within a couple of weeks, sometimes a month. But those charges are still placed on those children and students.
Any particular areas that are trouble spots, or are you seeing this district-wide?
This is district-wide. There's no particular areas. It's just district-wide.
Yeah. So my dad used to like to talk about having people come and talk some sense into me. So how do we do that in the schools? What are you doing to try to educate not just the students, I assume, but parents as well about this problem?
Well, first and foremost, we encourage our officers to get to know the kids. And in the process of getting to know them, being a mentor, we talk to them about various parts of life. Vaping, smoking, using drugs is one of those facets that we try to talk to the kids about. The other thing is we started getting the administration, encouraging them to make announcements, educating the kids of how serious vaping is, not just for your health, but how you can get in trouble from the law standpoint.
Yeah, and you probably heard these two ladies talk about A, how prevalent of a problem this is becoming, and B, the potential long-term health impacts that some of these students could be facing if they continue down this. And just on a personal level, how does that affect you when you deal with these issues among students?
Well, it's sad because, again, I know, as well as my guests on the panel, they know, we all know how serious it is and the long-term effects. These children, they don't know. And so that's one of the biggest reasons we try to reach out to them, educate them, try to talk to the parents, and get the parents involved, because a lot of this starts at home with parents.
So speaking of which, how does that go when you get the parents involved?
I would like to say all positive, but we know in real world that's not the case. Some parents are, not my child is not that person, or this can't happen to my child. And unfortunately, we see it happen. Then there are other parents that embrace what we're trying to do, and they're very supportive. So
last question, you have an offender that you just can't get them to stop. What remedy or what could happen to them as far as their continued education in the Cobb County School District?
Well, ultimately, the school district has the authority to remove them from school. They can expel them from school. And again, that's an administrative issue, but they can be expelled from Cobb County schools.
Okay, last question real quick. Just your message to the parents who are out there watching it today about the problem and what they should be doing.
Parents, get to know what your kids are doing. Talk to them. Educate them the importance of not using drugs. Encourage them to go to school to get their education. And if you can do that, and just don't be afraid to check to see what your children are doing. If they're living in your house, you have a right to check their room to see what they're doing. It's ultimately up to you how your kids, your students, how they're successful in life.
Okay. Well, speaking of which, we're going to have a very personal look at that issue and how parents handled the situation, or maybe how they could have handled it better, and that'll be coming up right after this break.
I'm an ex-drug dealer, and I'll be your sub today. Can you see anything different as a pill?
No.
You don't know?
Fentanyl is being mixed into everything now. There's only one thing that will save somebody's life. That is naloxone nasal spray.
Fentanyl, it's cheap, it's potent, and it's profitable.
Why would drug dealers put a lethal dose of fentanyl in drugs if they know it's so harmful?
Really just all about the money.
I just didn't realize that one pill could change your whole life.
More kids should know.
And welcome back to our set as we continue to look at how we can combat teen opioid and vaping abuse, not just in schools, but at home or anywhere else for that matter. New person on our set is Stacey O Shield. Stacey, I'm going to introduce you in just a second. I want to talk to Lori Judy real quickly here. We've heard a couple of mentions of fentanyl. We see it in the news all the time, and we know how bad it is. Tell us what it is.
So fentanyl is a synthetic opioid. It is a legitimate pharmaceutical that's used for things like cancer pain, really painful conditions. It's about 50 times stronger than heroin. And we know that it's very easily produced illicitly, and therefore fentanyl has been found in many street drugs, including drugs that are made to look like other legitimate pharmaceutical drugs, such as Xanax or Percocet. And that's where a lot of people are actually coming into contact with fentanyl, is they believe that they're taking some other kind of drug, and it's actually been contaminated illicitly with the fentanyl.
Yeah, so we know it's bad. We know some of the stuff we've been hearing about is bad. How can we, as parents and adults, or anybody, really help prevent this from becoming a tragic situation?
So the first thing you can do is just to try your hardest to make sure that your kids don't get started taking opioids. A lot of kids will get prescribed opioids for like sports injuries or wisdom teeth. And then that's where they start maybe misusing them. So one good thing that parents should do, I brought some little props here. One good thing that parents should do is if they themselves are prescribed an opioid or anyone in their home is prescribed an opioid, they should probably lock it away in some kind of box like this one that we give away at our events around the community. Just put them in here to make sure that kids can't get a hold of them. Another thing you should do is if you have any unused medication, you should dispose of it properly. And I have a few other props here. This is a little packet of something called Dispose RX. You mix this with the water and the drug, and then you can safely throw it in the trash. And there are some other things out there that you can do that with as well.
So if I'm interested in getting more information about those things, where can I find it?
You can come to our website, cobbanddouglaspublichealth.org, and we will give you some resources on some places that you can get some free Dispose RX. And you can buy these at CVS, anywhere that, any kind of pharmacy.
Okay. Stacey O Shields, welcome to our program. This is something near and dear to your heart, I know, for tragic reasons. You're a Cobb County mother. You've been a teacher. And you lost your daughter in 2021?
Yes.
What happened?
Well, it was quite a shock. Actually, in August of 2021, her boyfriend was living with us and he passed away tragically. We thought that it might be something due to a seizure. We didn't have a toxicology at that point to see what the cause of death was. A month later, she died as well. Come to find out, they both had an accidental overdose of fentanyl. Next to my daughter, where we found her, she had taken a fourth of a fake pressed Xanax. So there could be just the slightest amount of fentanyl that can cause death. You're talking about how it's kind of saturated in the community about fentanyl and this type of thing. Well, being a mother of 8, I heard those things, but I never thought that would be me. So I definitely want to address like stigma and stereotype and who's taking these and who might it be. And it is a one time could end it all. So I tell any parent, your child could take something that looks like something they've had in the past that they trusted, and it could look same little writing on it, and it could end their life instantly. It's that deadly, and it's that serious, and it's becoming a wide epidemic. And I'm here, this mother of all these children, and didn't think that would affect me. That wouldn't be something that we would ever experience. And in August and in September of 2021, we had 2 deaths in our home.
Got to be tough to live with, and I appreciate you trying to make a good out of a bad by coming out and talking about your experience. And I saw you over there when I was talking to Lieutenant Wilson about what parents could do, what they can look for, how they can react to it. And you and I had talked before this program about there's always second guessing.
Absolutely.
And so what is your message to parents and others about if it doesn't look or feel right?
Exactly. So, hindsight's 20/20. You could have, should have, would have. But when I look back on things, and I would just say to parents, there is a little voice inside you. There is something that goes, this doesn't smell right, it doesn't look right, the story doesn't add up, and you need to listen to that voice. And I wish that I had been more aggressive with that, kind of fearful of, I don't know what to do. Are they doing something that I should be aware of? They're sleepy, red flags, sleepy, withdrawn, isolated. Those were types of things that I had seen. But again, I didn't really jump into it. You look back, you wish that you had. So I would just encourage all parents. You don't necessarily have to be authoritative, but you need to listen to that voice. You need to ask questions. You need to possibly look through their things and be vigilant. Just like with the vaping, with all of these things. We're very distracted as parents, but this is a life or death situation, and I don't want to see any parent go through what we've. And unfortunately, these children of mine, this daughter and her boyfriend, left behind a little girl that we have now adopted. So it's a far-reaching, tragic story, and I don't want anyone to ever experience that.
Your message is so true, but boy, isn't it so hard to go through your kids' stuff?
It is, and that's where I said, listen to that voice, because you're like, there's privacy, but I don't want to be that parent. But you know what? Something's not right. I would just say, encourage you, take that step. If you're unsure, talk to a pediatrician, talk to another counselor or a professional. If you're unsure, I pulled up behavior of teens. It looks very similar to someone who may be under some influence, withdrawn, sleepy, maybe losing interest in some of the things that they had before. But you kind of know in your inside if something's not quite right, and I would say parents act on that.
And so you went through the kind of an unspeakable tragedy, certainly for a parent, any parent, but it doesn't end after the funeral. It seems like you've had frustration trying to get this message out and fight this ongoing problem.
It really is a problem, and I would say, like we were talking about the vaping, educate yourself. So as a parent, I didn't know what Narcan was. I didn't really know what fentanyl was. I knew it was something that people were doing, but I didn't know that it would ever be. So educate yourself as a parent. We're saturated with a lot of information, but this is life or death. And then I would say just be bold, take that step if you need, surround yourself by other people. There are other groups and support groups and things like that out there if you're ever unsure, and lots of information.
Right.
I would like to interject, since she brought up Narcan. I think that it's very important for parents to know what Narcan is. That's the brand name of the drug reversal, the opioid reversal drug, naloxone. If you've ever been prescribed an opioid, or if your kid has ever been prescribed an opioid, or if you even just have a kid in your home, you should probably keep naloxone with you. Nearby. You can get it at any pharmacy. We have a standing order for Georgia that you can buy it without a prescription. You can also go somewhere like GeorgiaOverdosePrevention.org, and if you're a high-risk person, they will give you free Narcan. We have on our website, CobbandDouglasPublicHealth.org, we have a training video done by Nurse Cersei that tells you how to administer the Narcan.
That was going to be my next question. So I buy it, then what,
Yeah, we have that training video for you, and it'll go through what it looks like to have an overdose, how you administer the Narcan, and then how you should stay. And another thing that's very important for everyone to know is we have the Georgia amnesty law. So if you if you see someone overdosing, you should call 911. You're protected with small amounts of drugs on your person if you, in good faith, have made a call. And everyone should know that, because too many people die because their friends are afraid to call 911.
Yeah. Stacey, just a question for you that popped into my head. You're a proud mother of 8 children. How has what happened to you affected your relationship with your other kids?
Well, I asked a lot of questions like, did you guys know any of this? Or what could you have told me differently? And our older daughter was, sneaky. But I have still an 18-year-old, a 15-year-old, an 11-year-old, and a 7-year-old, and then the 2-year-old granddaughter that we've adopted. And so my eyes and ears are much more open. I'm much more aware. Now, when I was raising these children, my daughter who passed away, Clover, was very allergic to Yellow Jackets. I kept an EpiPen with me all the time. Now, I feel about Narcan, I can't say enough about it, that I would like to distribute it as if it was an EpiPen, that anybody could tragically have an allergic reaction, but it would be a deadly situation. So I'd want to raise awareness for that and keep it on my person.
Right. And what you said earlier is true, that with fentanyl, it could be just a one-time, your kid could be going off the highway one time in their life.
Just try this pill, take this one. This is just a little something, this will make you feel good. And if we could just get that into those kids' minds, that it really could be one swallow.
Okay. I appreciate you telling your story. I appreciate the perspective from all of you so far. And we have some other issues we want to touch on and another guest to bring on the set. We'll do that right after this.
I thought I was being a good mother and doing everything right. After Madison's operation, we had leftover medication that I figured I'd save just in case. I put it away and didn't think anything of it.
Madison is a good kid, and I never imagined this would happen.
I always thought, this happens to other people, not us. Parents, please, dispose of your unused medication before it's too late.
For more information on where to dispose of unused medication, visit ccapsa.org.
Brought on our fifth and final guest. We only have 5 chairs, so you're going to be the final guest of the day. Jeff Breedlove, you are Chief of Communications and Policy for the Georgia Council for Recovery and on the Georgia School of Addiction Studies as well. You've had some foray into the political arena, and it also says in your bio here, a person in long-term recovery with a passion to share his story so others know recovery is real. And we just heard a tremendous story from Stacey O Shields. What's your impression after hearing what she has told our audience?
Well, the first thing I'd say about Stacey and her husband and their family is that they are strong. They're heroes for having the courage to tell their story out loud, because when they tell their story out loud, they're breaking stigma and they're going to save somebody's life. So first of all, I think they're heroes.
And you've been telling your story out loud as well. So what is your message after some of what we've heard today?
So I am a person in long-term recovery. I was in active addiction for 30 years. I'm somebody that by rights, I should be dead. But I would say to parents, addiction's real. And it's not just another issue, it's an epidemic. The #1 cause of death in the United States of America, according to the CDC, for Americans 18 to 45 is fentanyl overdoses. So this is a very serious problem. But the good news is that recovery is also real. There's 24 million Americans in recovery in the United States and 800,000 in Georgia. So as real as addiction is, recovery is also real.
I really like this question that came along with your bio that they asked me to ask you, which I think is a very interesting question. What should parents not do?
The first thing parents shouldn't do is think that their loved one is a bad person. This is not a lifestyle choice. It is a legitimate medical disease. It's properly called substance use disorder. We all call it addiction, but it's a medical issue. So you can't fix your loved one. You can love them, you can try to get them help, but you're not going to fix them. No, I couldn't get healthy until I was ready to. My mother, my father, my sister, my wife, my son, my friends, my coworkers, I'm not going to recover because they tell me to. So don't lecture, don't try to fix, just love. Share options, be there for them, but do not think that your loved one is a bad person. Understand they have a very serious disease.
So I can understand that a parent who may have a child going through something like this would feel incredibly frustrating if they can't turn that child's life around. But your message is there's still maybe light at the end of that tunnel.
There's definitely light at the end of the tunnel. I was in active addiction for 30 years. The last 11, I kind of knew I wanted to stop. People were trying to help me stop. But it wasn't until I said, now I'm ready. So you need to support them, you need to love them, you need to be there for them, but don't make it a confrontational thing where they're not, quote, listening to you. You need to love them. Meet them where they are.
So you finally are able to maybe get with your son or daughter, get their life turning around a little bit. But what does that look like? What is addiction recovery like? What is that procedure like?
So this disease, it does have, when you're in active addiction, then there's a pathway to treatment, and then there's the rest of the rest of my life will, Lord willing, be in recovery. Recovery is one day at a time. The closest medical analogy I can give you is like a diabetic. If a diabetic follows their doctor's orders every single day, they're going to have a healthy life. But if they stop, they're not. So every day, a person has a recovery protocol that they sort of buy into. For me, it involves starting the day by making up my bed. It's as simple as that. And then I do other things throughout the day. I will say this, the opposite of addiction is connection. So part of everybody's recovery, because there can be different pathways for recovery, but the key is that they're going to be connecting to people in a healthy, proper way. So just remember that they will be, once they go to some type of treatment, and there's lots of different ways to get treatment, they're going to be in recovery for the rest of their life.
So is there anything you can say to that person who may be watching this either live right now or on video later, who may be coming to that realization that, you know, I may need help or want to get off this train. What would you say to that person who may be kind of on that edge and about ready to jump into maybe addiction recovery?
Look, I'd say this, recovery's real. There's a community of your brothers and sisters out there, a strong peer community in Georgia. And there's peer-led programs that are completely free, that the council and the state of Georgia pay for so that you don't have to pay any money. And you can call 844-326-5400, and the person that answers that phone is going to be a peer. And they'll talk to you, they'll listen to you, and they'll tell you about these wonderful recovery organizations that do everything from hiking to any type of social activity where you can be embraced by people that have been where you are. They're not law enforcement, they're not doctors, they're not clinicians, and they're not even your family. They're your peers. You are not alone, and there's people that will love you in recovery.
That's a beautiful kind of ending statement for this entire program, but with the risk of freaking out my Cobb School District friends who are running this program, I did want to let everybody kind of have a last word in this, just to kind of tie together your portion of this program and what we should take out of it. Lori, Judy, do you want to say anything?
I would just like to repeat that if you go to our website, cobbanddouglaspublichealth.org, you can find links to other important programs in Cobb County. You can find links to treatment providers, as well as Laura Searcy's video on how to administer naloxone and how to dispose safely of your unused medications.
Lieutenant Wilson?
I would like to just emphasize how important it is for the parents to be involved with their children, with the schools, and understand that we're there to protect and help them, and so are the administrators in the schools. So don't be afraid to ask for assistance. And like Stacey said, if you sense something's not right, don't be afraid to actually check your child and get some help for them.
Nurse Searcy?
My message for parents is this: you are more powerful than you know, and your children care more about what you say than they let on. And I know some parents think, you know what, we've talked about how all this stuff is out there, and it almost seems like it's unavoidable rite of passage, and there's nothing I can do about it. But prevention works, you're a key part, and we know that since the 1970s, there's been a steadily increasing number of young people who have made the choice to stay completely substance-free for reasons of health. And that number is growing every year. So prevention works, it's possible, and your kids need your support in making that one choice to stay healthy.
And Stacio Shields?
I would absolutely say that, we're living in such a fast-paced life, and children are so involved in things, and we want to get them here and there, and we're so concerned about the GPA, but that connection that everybody keeps talking about, the opposite of isolation, really just stopping, educating yourself, having a conversation with your child, and trying to be as real as possible, because it is a life or death situation that they could be facing. They need to know that putting something in their mouth could end their life. And then when you reach them on that heartfelt, in a positive way, you will be heard. You will be heard. And then they know that you love them, and you'll be doing the right thing.
I appreciate you all coming out this evening. I promised I wouldn't keep you very late. This is not a comprehensive look at the subject. I got through maybe 1 out of 4 questions that I had for you all. But for those of you watching, if you just learn a little bit, or maybe are prompted to take some sort of action to prevent a tragedy, to prevent a lifetime of suffering, this program certainly would have been worth it. We do invite you to seek out all the resources that were mentioned here today. If you saw something that piqued your interest, find out more about it. Maybe dive in. Maybe go get yourself some naloxone. It's important to have that. You never know when you'll run into a situation where you may need it. I would like to thank our partners with the Cobb County School District. We're in their facility. They're running the TV broadcast. Big partners here, Cobb and Douglas Public Health, Marietta Schools, and my folks with Cobb County Government. We all thank you all for coming together and shedding some light on what is becoming an increasing problem, not only in schools, but society as well. And we certainly hope for those of you watching live or in the future that you all continue on with your lives in the best of health. In the meantime, thank you all.